A Jewish scholar said that Armenians are the only nation in the world that owns a quarter of ancient Jerusalem, and claimed that the ancestors of Jews are considered to be Armenians. Jewish professor Boris Moiseson from Columbia University published a book about ancient Armenians in 2001. In that book, he states that Armenians are at the epicenter of the world's oldest civilization. He also added in his notes that biblical Israel was born from groups of Armenian origin. The old city of Jerusalem is divided into 4 parts, of which there are Christian, Muslim, Jewish and Armenian lands. Armenians are the only nation in the world that owns a quarter of the ancient city of Jerusalem. Even the Tower of David is located in the Armenian region. This is the reason why Professor Moiseson mentioned the Armenian nation as the first civilization of that region in his book. The Jewish scholar he also added in his notes that biblical Israel was born from groups of Armenian origin.
Charles William Wilson wrote in the 11th edition of the British Encyclopedia that Armenians are an Eastern people who, like Jews, exhibit exceptional and widespread prevalence and have the ability to adapt wonderfully to racial persistence and circumstances. During the reign of Tigran the Great, which marked the largest size of Armenia, thousands of Jews were deported and settled in Greater Armenia in the 1st century BC. Today, only small, mainly Russianized Jewish communities of no more than 800 people are preserved in Armenia. On the other hand, Armenians have been living in Israel for centuries, and the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem was founded in 638. It is located in the Armenian district of the Old City of Jerusalem. According to a 2006 study, 790 Armenians live in the Old City alone.
According to a report by Eretz Shiva, a group of Jewish and Israeli scholars believe that Azerbaijan is behind a smear campaign against Armenia and have come out in defense of Armenia. In an open letter, the scholars write, "We, the undersigned, are Jewish and Israeli scholars of the Near and Middle East. We are writing this open letter to protect the honor and good reputation of the Armenian people. We are writing this letter because, in our opinion, a defamation campaign against Armenians has started in the Israeli and Jewish media, funded by the government of Azerbaijan. Armenians have an ancient civilization, and were the first to accept Christianity as the state religion. The Armenian quarter of Jerusalem, our capital, has existed for 1,500 years. They are a proud people, but they have suffered greatly due to being surrounded by Muslim neighbors. Despite having lost their independence and being deprived of political and military power, they have created their statehood, and their large Armenian community has achieved success in business, medicine, art, and literature. Although there is no indigenous Jewish community in Armenia, the presence of Jewish religious terminology in Armenian suggests very early connections between the two peoples. 100 years ago, Ottoman Turkish nationalists used World War I as an excuse to exterminate the Armenians. Many Azeri Turks participated in anti-Armenian massacres in various places, including in the region called Nagorno-Karabakh. A generation after those events, Polish Jewish jurist Raphael Lemkin coined the term genocide to describe what happened to the Armenians. Franz Werfel, a Jewish writer, wrote The 40 Days of Musa Daw, a bestseller about the successful armed resistance of Armenian peasants. This book inspired both the fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943 and our Haganah, which was preparing to give its last stand near Carmel if the Nazis invaded Israel. After World War I, Western powers sought friendship with Turkey in their crusade against communism. The United States abandoned its policy of protecting the Armenian massacre survivors and the homeless. A small Soviet Armenian state was founded in the eastern edge of historical Armenia, in the Soviet Transcaucasia. In Israel, we have had many times more nightmares than any other country, and Armenia has also suffered greatly. Haunted by memories of horror, broken people tried to plant trees, build cities, and start a new life. In Israel, we made the desert bloom, and the Armenians did the same on their rocky soil, but they had to fight against collectivization, Stalinist purges, a heavy hand, and the watchful ear of the secret police. When the Soviet Union collapsed, extreme nationalistic ideologies and religious extremism invaded the minds of people finally freed from 7 decades of imposed communist dogma. The suppressed ethnic tension turned into a war both within the former Soviet republics and between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The two newly independent states went to war over Nagorno-Karabakh, which has an Armenian majority in Azerbaijan, and whose population demanded autonomy. Armenians occupied both Artsakh and the extensive strategic buffer zone of the adjacent regions. In the fall of 2020, Azerbaijan started a war to retake Artsakh. Russia sold arms to both sides. Turkey openly supported Azerbaijan by providing human and technical resources, including high-tech drones, and Israel sold drones and other equipment to its ally Azerbaijan. It was not Israel's war, and we have good relations with Armenia and should not be biased. Not surprisingly, the recent war was a pretext for anti-Semitic attacks against Israel in Armenia, especially on social media. Azerbaijan took advantage of this to launch a propaganda attack against the Jewish and Israeli mass media. Various articles mentioned the recent vandalism of the Holocaust memorial in the capital of Armenia.
The US will back Ukraine in its fight against Russia for as long as it takes U.S. President Joe Biden has said on an unannounced visit to Kyiv. We have every confidence you're going to continue to prevail, he said. Mr. Biden's first trip to Ukraine as president came days before the first anniversary of Russia's invasion. He said that Russia's President Vladimir Putin had been dead wrong to think Russia could outlast Ukraine and its Western allies. He met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the pair visited a memorial to soldiers who have died in the 9 years since Russia annexed Crimea and its proxy forces captured parts of the eastern Donbas region. Mr. Biden's presence was intended to reaffirm America's unwavering commitment to Ukraine's democracy, sovereignty, and territorial integrity according to a White House statement. He had taken a 10-hour train journey from Poland to reach Kyiv in secret. Later returning to Poland, Russia was informed about the trip a few hours before President Biden's